It's time for College Sports Weekly. How do you do, ladies and gentlemen? I'm Bill Hazen. The Texas Longhorns know how tough it is to win at Iowa State. They lost a two-pointer to the Cyclones last weekend. The Longhorns are back on the road this week, visiting a Baylor team that fell out of the ranks of the undefeated. These two teams know each other well, according to Longhorns coach Tom Herman.
I think anytime you play a team within your state that, you're going to be recruiting the same players, and, our guys on our team know a lot of those players, having played against them or with them, some of them. So anytime you have a team that is recruiting from the same pool that you are, and they've got players that your players know, I think the familiarity of it, breeds some excitement to the game.
And that's some of what's happening. Here's what's coming up on College Sports Weekly. No train rides this week for Coach John Jenkins. The High Plains Drifter of college football is back in the saddle of the big neighborhood. The coach will be analyzing last week's games as well as this weekend's matchups. Does T-Mobile have the right approach for rolling out their powerful national 5G service next month? Rex Lardner will tell you. When we talk shop, we complete our multi-part interview with the commissioner of the Indiana High School Athletic Association, Bobby Cox. We'll talk about trick uniforms that are making players hard to see. And Gene DeLisio covers some football matchups on the Small College Beat. That's all ahead on College Sports Weekly.
We first opened about 10 years ago. We were small, just a few of us, but it was exciting. I always dreamt of having my own business. It was kind of slow at first, but things started picking up. We had big plans, but in our wildest dreams, we never thought we'd have this much work. Yeah, with so many businesses caught off guard by the storm, Reed Waste Management has never been busier.
What will become of your business after a disaster? Nearly 2/3 of businesses aren't prepared for an emergency, and 40% of businesses that experience a disaster never recover. Make an emergency plan now before it's too late. For a free online tool that helps you develop an emergency plan to keep your business up and running should disaster strike, visit ready.gov/business. Brought to you by the Federal Emergency Management Agency, the American Red Cross, and the Ad Council.
Music is a bridge between the material and the spiritual. My name is Harvey Lauer, and I'm 82. As a blind person, you have to be aware that nobody can tell you what you can or can't do. You really have to try things. My folks got me a little radio in 1940, and that was the best Christmas present I ever got. When I was 11 years old is when I started to play music, play the piano, and then the accordion, and then the cello. My wife, who was also blind, was a good cook. When she died, that's when I started Meals on Wheels. America, let's do lunch.
It's Meals on Wheels. 1 in 6 seniors faces the threat of hunger, and millions more live in isolation. Drop off a hot meal and say a quick hello. Volunteer for Meals on Wheels by donating your lunch break at americaletsdolunch.org. This message brought to you by Meals on Wheels America and the Ad Council.
Back to talk football. Don't run away now, because we're going to bring in the High Plains Drifter of college football himself. Guy who was a heck of a baseball player, too, in college. We go back to John Jenkins in the big neighborhood, former coach at the University of Houston, and a guy who's done a little time as Karnak in college football predictions, and Karnak hit a few and he struck out on one or two. So we'll find out.
Hey, buddy, I tell you what, an exciting week we had this past week, and we got another one coming up. As you indicated, I wasn't as accurate in that Michigan State, Michigan possible upset, was I?
Yeah, indeed. And I think Michigan has kind of found themselves. Let's go ahead and open with that ball game, John, and then we'll get to the rest of them. The interesting thing that I see for Michigan right now, John, is every key game down the stretch, they're playing them all in the big house, and that will include Ohio State. So they have a lot of home games down the stretch. That's a good situation for Jim Harbaugh.
Yeah, you bet. A real convincing win over Michigan State, and against a fine Mark D'Antonio team. But, Bill, I think it still goes back to their punishing win, let's call it, over Notre Dame, that I believe those players now really believe they can run the table. And they've got a great element of confidence where there was a lot of doubt early in the season. I believe that. That's what happens. You get that tight chemistry. We talked a lot about this going into that Notre Dame game, and I said, with the tough schedule that they've got remaining, nobody giving them a chance, I said, the outsiders, what you got to do when you have a team like this, you just got to get tightly entrenched and tightly bound, and you got to come out of there and you got to fight your way out of it. And boy, did they ever do that. And again, as mentioned, another great win, against Michigan State, and taking on a very, very good, tough Indiana team in this one. So if they can run the table, they are really going to be the talk of college football here.
Yeah. Speaking of Indiana, John, the Hoosiers went to Penn State this last weekend. Yep. Gosh, they played well. They played them within a touchdown. That's a good Penn State team.
Yeah, it sure is. It sure is. And Indiana they've been solid all season, and Penn State, hey, they're, of course, we'll talk about this later in the program, matched up against Ohio State this week. So that's going to be the big game of the week.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. We learned once again that Jack Trice Stadium in Ames, Iowa, is one of the toughest places to play in America, and this time it was the Texas Longhorns who found out firsthand.
Oh, yeah. And hey, we were accurate on this one.
Yeah, we sure were.
We knew with some close, tough games that Coach Campbell has lost this season that, hey, you know what? The odds of them bouncing back and having something good happening for them, yes, it did. And I tell you what, the Texas Longhorns, they were on the short end of the stick, and Iowa State did prevail, just like they've done against some great football teams over the years here in recent years. So Texas now, they are behind the 8 ball big time.
Boy, they sure are. Georgia and Auburn, and this game was played at Auburn. Georgia got a victory, a touchdown victory.
Yeah, it was just like exactly what we predicted, a big heavyweight championship fight. They were taking swings at each other, those guys in the O-line and D-line, and Georgia did prevail in a close, low-scoring game. Tough one to lose for Auburn, that's for sure. Now, the complexion here, Auburn's got a junior varsity game in Sanford, I think, coming up. And then they have the big one against Alabama, which Alabama now is limping in to the finish without their starting quarterback. So that's going to be interesting down the road, isn't it, Bill?
Yeah, it really will. And as you mentioned early in the year, John, when everybody thought we were going to be overloaded with undefeated teams, and you said, no way, don't worry about it. They're going to start falling by the wayside.
Yeah, particularly in the big neighborhood, they knock each other off. Even still, there's some concern about how many SEC teams, at one time they said, hey, there could be 3 out of 4 in the playoffs. No, not so fast, because again, they're going to have the SEC championship game. Alabama is not going to be in that, by the way. They're going to have to rely on somebody knocking each other off, whether it be possibly Georgia and LSU matching up on each other. And one of those are going to go down. And so we're going to see if they bounce out. Somebody gets to come in. Now, listen, this is a very interesting deal. We've talked about the lack of excitement out there on the West Coast, the Pac-12 all season long, particularly the lack of defense. Here's a very interesting scenario playing out. Oregon continues to win games since they had that opening day loss, I mean, they led the entire game, and Auburn nipped them right there at the finish, with just a few seconds left in the game to beat them. They have never lost another game. They're sitting there with one loss, and yet they're looking way outside. This is what's awkward about this. When you look at the 4-team playoff committee, hey, guys, the committee chairman is the Oregon athletic director, Rob Mullins. And you know what? You don't hear protesting going on. You know why? Because they know there's a real strong deficiency out there. What are they going to argue about? Strength of schedule?
Yeah.
Not hardly.
Yeah.
There's such a lack of defense that's been played out there. And you know what? I've written 7 books over the years as far as instructional football and aspects of football. I think my next book, I'm going to entitle this The Lost Decade of Football, Scientology and Those Missing Defenses Out There in the Pac-12 Conference. What do you think? It's just fascinating how, at years past, we used to have a very tough, solid Southern Cal team, UCLA, even Washington Huskies. In recent years, there was one team you could always rely on having great defense, but boy, it sure is lacking this season.
Boy, you're right. Minnesota is out of the undefeated ranks. John, there's another one, and I know how much you like Kirk Ferentz, the head coach at Iowa, and boy, they got him over there in Iowa City.
Yeah, that didn't surprise me. I think Minnesota's had a great season. They're going to continue to. Coaching staff there has done a super job. That's one of our candidates, as far as coach of the year. And hey, they're going to continue to bounce back. They're not just going to lay down and feel sorry for themselves the rest of the way and take it on the chin. But you got to give it to Iowa. Hey, they're a good football team and really well coached, and that one did not surprise me.
Let's file this next one under a tale of 2 games, or 2 halves perhaps, John. And Baylor had a great first half, and then I don't know what happened. By the time it was all over, Oklahoma had won.
It was like a Twilight Zone game, wasn't it? The first half, Baylor is thrashing them and clawing them up just like a poor camper that let the Baylor Bears come right into their tent, in the first half and just mauled them. And you'd think that I think this happened early in the third quarter. Jalen Hurts for Oklahoma was going in for a score, and as he's going into the end zone, he gets stripped to the ball right on about the half-yard line. And then the replay showed that he was about a half-yard short from scoring. Baylor recovered it, and I thought, hey, this poor Oklahoma team is snake bit tonight. But you know what? Their defense rose up, and they dug their cleats in the ground, and Baylor hardly made a first down the entire second half. Didn't score a point.
Well, John, let's hang in here. We're going to come back, and when we do, we'll take a look at the week ahead. So stay tuned for that. Get that arm limbered up and ready to go. I'll run down the sideline, and we'll go ahead and hit on a bomb there.
I got you going deep, Bill. I got you going deep.
That's good. That's good. I like the sound of that. Coach John Jenkins from the big neighborhood, the man who spent a lot of time in railroad boxcars through the years. But we will be coming back, and when we do, Rex Lardner will join us, and we'll talk shop next on College Sports Weekly. Once again, it is time to talk shop. Rex Lardner steps in, longtime television sports executive at CBS, NBC, and Turner. Also a former associate commissioner at Conference USA, and he now consults the broadcasting industry, professional and college sports entities from Tucson, Arizona. And Rex, let's start with this item. We've been talking about 5G quite a bit. We've been updating everyone on the new 5G technology that is beginning to roll out on a limited market basis. Of course, it began here in Chicago and in Minneapolis, where Verizon rolled it out during the NCAA finals last year, but it was very limited. Sprint has also introduced their service in this market. but we are about to see a full nationwide deployment of 5G service, and T-Mobile is going to be the first to do it. The date will be December the 6th. The T-Mobile service will roll out on the same frequencies that are used by the current 4G offering. The speed will be a little slower, but it'll still be quite good, and it'll have the same footprint that T-Mobile's 4G network has, so it'll be there. There's going to be some super high frequency stuff added on later. Does T-Mobile have the right idea here, Rex?
They do, Bill. I really believe they do. Absolutely. It's interesting that T-Mobile will be the first one to roll it out. But I got to think, in this age of technology and so much social media, it's going to be a great thing for faster service.
Yeah, here's the difference, Rex, for our audience, if it's not coming through clearly. The speeds are going to be in the area of around 250 megabits to 500 megabits. That's about 15 to 20 times faster than where we are right now with 4G. But this 5G service that T-Mobile will introduce, it'll work almost identically to what we have right now. It won't be limited to small zones and all of this. Sure. The T-Mobile approach is about convenience as compared to raw speed. I would think that's a big winner for college students and others who live very mobile lives. Your thoughts?
Bill, I agree with you completely. I think for college students and for the young millenniums and so forth, where they're so impatient and everything's got to be done right away, no more appointment viewing and all of that, this is perfect for them. It couldn't have come at a better time. And I think, as I said, the technology is so incredible today. I think they are most appreciative of it than the old school people like you and me.
Rex, does the increased speed enhance the phone's appeal as a mass distribution device?
Absolutely, Bill. I believe it does. I mean, I think everyone's always so busy, always in a hurry, and as I said, impatient and so forth, that I think the increased speed will clearly enhance the phone's appeal as a mass distribution device.
Let's tie this to some interesting research on cord cutting, which we know is a part of this on the bigger scale. Moffett-Nathanson, this is a research firm, and their research shows that live sports consumers are cable's best defense against cord cutting. Here are the numbers, Rex. According to their survey work, 90% of those who consume sports regularly continue to subscribe to pay TV. 79% of that is cable or satellite. The remaining 11% of that 90 is in the new over-the-top services. How do those numbers sound to you?
Bill, they sound pretty accurate and legit, I think. I would have thought that 90%, even a number larger than that consume sports and subscribe to pay TV. 79% of that is cable or satellite, and the remaining is 11. Those numbers all seem pretty significant and pretty accurate. So I agree. I think there'll still be cord cutting, as we go forward, but those numbers sound legit.
Most cable services, as we all know, are continuing to try and bundle as much live sports together as possible, forming a sports tier, if you will. The analysts say this is going to continue, which means that sports is actually what's driving cable bundling. Do you agree with what the analysts are thinking here?
I do, Bill. I really do. I think that sports drives cable in many respects. It helps the bundling. And in our package here, we have DirecTV. There are all kinds of different sports packages you can subscribe to. And I think the sports fan who craze for live sports where you don't know the outcome, this is the perfect opportunity.
How close are we, Rex, to a complete elimination of so-called free TV for play-by-play coverage?
Bill, I think it's coming close, but I really think it's a ways away. I really think there'll be free TV as we know it for a couple of years to come at least. I mean, we don't know the advances in technology and how it also will affect 5G and other kinds of services. But my sense is free TV, as we call it, will be here for a while.
Yeah. Hey, here's one for you. Listen to this. I heard this one. This one is way off the radar. As many in our audience may know if they follow politics, there was a recent governor's election in Louisiana, and the current governor, a Democrat by the name of John Bel Edwards, won re-election. There's been a lot of political commentary on this, Rex, and I have an interesting spin for you and our listeners. This I heard. A Democratic advisor says that LSU's football victory over Alabama influenced the outcome of the election. Listen to this. The thinking is that LSU fans saw the victory over the Crimson Tide and said to themselves, in effect, hey, you know, our state is headed in the right direction. We're doing great over here. And what do you think of that?
You know, Bill, I can't believe it. That's kind of a little bit strange. It's been a while since LSU beat Alabama.
Yeah.
And maybe that was part of it. It was overdue, I think. But I think that's a little bit of stretching that it was related to LSU's win over the Crimson Tide.
Oh, man. Well, let's check in on Scott Frost at Nebraska. He is moving toward the end of his second year, having taken over from UCF. His record going into this weekend, Rex, is 8-14, but they just extended his contract another 2 years, and they've reset the buyout on him to a Rex Lardner type level of $26 million to buy him out. Is Nebraska getting its money's worth?
You know, Bill, I think they believe they will. I think Scott is the answer, the long-term answer for their coaching chores. He has tremendous success as an assistant and then at UCF, the University of Central Florida, as you know.
Yeah.
And he's obviously a former player for the Cornhuskers and so forth. And I think they struggled. And, you know, next year will be the start of year 3 for him. And a lot of his recruits will be starters on the team. So I think in the terms of the long term, he is their guy, and they believe he is.
Well, at least he's going to get to year 3, and that puts him ahead of Willie Taggart and Chad Morris, doesn't it? They didn't even get close. Yeah, they didn't even get close to year 3. We talked about that, of course, last week, and neither of them, of course, got 2 years in to try and turn things around. I think it's fair to say that college football coaching is getting more unstable by the year, and that means, Rex, that coaches are going to demand more guaranteed money in order to take these jobs. And what do you know? Now we have a vicious cycle, and you're seeing the buyouts. That's the guarantee, if you will. The guaranteed money is in the buyout, and the buyouts are getting astronomical, as we saw with Scott Frost, and a lot of people are observing that and saying to themselves, this money is getting totally out of line. And it looks like a vicious cycle, Rex. The faster they fire them, the more the money goes up. Is there any way to stop the cycle?
Bill, I don't think there is. I mean, there's so much pressure on Power 5 conferences today. Not even getting to halfway through year 2, the pressure is just incredible. And I think a lot of the coaches will demand more and more guaranteed money, as you mentioned. I think the only way to limit the cycle is just to try to limit the guaranteed money. In other words, the idea that a buyout isn't as much as it should be. People can't afford it. And, you know, the buyout is such, Bill, that it's a vicious cycle, like you said, and I think not much can be done on it.
And who's going to take those jobs if the guaranteed money is cut off or is very much reduced? I would speculate, Rex, that that's going to eliminate a lot of the top-line coaches, and you're going to get younger guys who are taking their first swing at it.
I agree, Bill. I think there'll be a lot of bright, young offensive and defensive coordinators that will slip into positions, and just the money will not quite be as heavy. So maybe that's a way, promotions for offensive and defensive coordinators and limiting the cycle.
Well, that's the thing, Rexter. They start to get up at your level money-wise there, and everybody gets nervous. You're the only guy I know of who can handle it without any problem at all.
Well, thank you. And
yeah.
if I need an agent, are you available? Yes.
Yeah. Oh, man. Thank you. You're welcome. Well, it was meant as a compliment, Rex, because you do a great job with it. And as always, a pleasure. And enjoy the sunshine. We'll see you next week.
Sounds great, Bill. Good being with you, as always.
Good being with you, Rex. Rex Lardner, we talk shop. And we're talking Rex Lardner type money there, and don't you forget it. We'll be back with more of College Sports Weekly.
Hi, I'm Mia Hamm. As a professional soccer player and a future soccer mom, I know how fun and rewarding sports can be. I also know how frustrating it is when you're sidelined by an injury. So I've teamed up with the American Association of Orthodontists to ask young athletes to play it safe when playing sports. I spent years training to become a world-class athlete. I know what it takes to become an expert on the field. Orthodontists understand this too. They're experts in their field, helping kids and adults obtain healthy, beautiful smiles. They want to help athletes prevent injuries and stay in the game. It only takes a second to get hurt, and too many athletes are risking injury because they're not properly equipped during games and practices. Wear the right protective gear, like mouth guards, face masks, and helmets. Your first line of defense against preventable injuries. Play it safe, achieve your goals, and keep smiling. Visit braces.org.
In recent weeks, we've had the opportunity to visit with the commissioner of the Indiana High School Athletic Association, Bobby Cox, and we've talked about some fascinating subjects, including football uniform visibility. Let's pick it up right there. It's interesting, I've had on as a guest on this program Rogers Redding, who heads up the officials at the college level, and he's pointed out the NCAA has a rule where they can go ahead and nick you for a charged timeout each quarter if you're wearing a uniform which officials say is not compliant. Does any of that sound appealing to you?
Well, I hate to stop the game. You know, we've gotten to a place in high school sports and in college sports, particularly in the professional level. I don't want to see high school sports get to the place where we're stopping to review plays and we're stopping because of a uniform and we're stopping. You know, the game needs to continue. So I think we do a better job of making our rules such that when we appear on the field, and we are adhering to the rules book, and the rules book speaks to contrasting numbers, and we ask the coach from each school, is your team properly equipped and ready for participation? That is a question that every football official asks the captains of the team. Mm-hmm. And the answer has to be yes. And if it's no, then they have to correct it before we start the game. I prefer that rather than get into the game and say, okay, can't see the uniform over there on the visiting team, so we're going to make them change and stop the game, charge them a timeout, things of that nature. We need to come to the game properly equipped and ready to play. That is a function of a rules book that speaks specifically and succinctly to these types of challenges that we have with respect to seeing the number on a uniform.
Would you, representing a state association, desire at some point to go ahead and attempt to certify these uniforms? The manufacturers, in other words, have to offer IHSAA or perhaps National Federation approved uniform designs and color arrangements.
Well, and that is part of the rules conversation in the rules book currently with respect to uniform, but we haven't done a very good job, frankly, of talking about the numbers. And so I think we need to revisit that and ensure that there is succinct language in the rules book respective of the number being a contrasting color to the body of the jersey. And if we can get that, then I think we're going to be able to see the number fine.
One final item, and I'd like to give you an opportunity to get out your own personal crystal ball and take a look ahead. What are the things that you, as a commissioner of a very fine state athletic association, what are you looking at as points going forward that are of particular interest or perhaps concern?
Well, I think first and foremost, Bill, that we need to remember the IHSA, along with our other 50 fellow state associations, that includes the District of Columbia, that we are about education-based athletics. This is an extension of the high school classroom. This wonderful time between grades 9 through 12, where young people learn life lessons, those athletic opportunities are merely extensions of those chances to learn those life lessons that are going to carry them into the next phase of their life, whatever that next phase might be. So as you point out, the crystal ball, I think that our focus needs to continue to be about education-based athletics, teaching those lessons. Winning's important. Everybody wants to win. And there's nothing wrong with the pursuit of winning. But as long as we're doing it in the right manner and we are investing in young people with transformational coaches that are invested in student athletes, to bring the development of them so that they become responsible, productive, and giving adults as they come back to their communities and begin to build those communities further. Those are the things that we need to focus on. We can do that through the beauty of high school sports, and it's important. All these things that we've talked about today, the recruiting aspect, making sure that we're putting young people in a good position to move forward, and that we're not neglecting the development of that young person so that they can be that productive citizen we hope for after their stints in college and beyond. Those types of things. I think we've got a serious challenge in this country with respect to amateurism. I'm not sure where amateurism even lies today. Our Olympic athletes certainly aren't amateurs anymore. I'm not sure collegiate athletes are going to remain amateurs for much longer. Yeah. If you look at the legislation that's been passed in the state of California, there are going to be other legislatures that look at that type of thing. We are doing everything in our power to make sure that the high school experience is pure and wholesome and amateur in nature. And that's a challenge. We're living in a different world today than we did 20 years ago. We're certainly living in a different world than we lived 45 years ago when I started high school. In those days, it's a different game today. So we have to think a little bit about what is this going to look like moving forward. And I think we've got to focus on making sure the experience is wholesome, that it's educational in nature, and that we're preparing young people the right way. And if we can do that through athletics, and we can do that through winning athletics. And there's nothing wrong with winning. There's nothing wrong with the pursuit of that. But are we doing it the right way? If we do it the right way, and we take the welfare and well-being of students first, then we're all going to be fine. When we lose that focus, then we get off into these areas that are not beneficial to kids, and we need to take a pause and refocus ourselves on what's good for people.
Well, Commissioner, I would like to thank you for the visit. Obviously, there's a lot on your plate here, and it's fascinating to learn a lot about it, some of the issues that you deal with on a daily basis that most of us would not know about. So thank you very much, and as one bulldog to another, I particularly salute you.
Well, thank you, Bill. Go Dogs.
There you go. I knew I could count on you for that. Bobby Cox, the commissioner of the IHSAA. We will be back with more of College Sports Weekly. Time now to check out the Small College Beat, where Gene DeLisio reports we have playoff pairings set. Gene?
Bill, the pairings are set for the NCAA Division II football playoffs. Slippery Rock, Valdosta State, Ferris State, and Minnesota State all have first-round byes this week. Augustana of South Dakota plays a first-round game at Colorado State Pueblo. And Coach Jerry Olszewski is making his second straight trip to the NCAA Division II playoffs.
Our mantra is real simple since last December was, we were guaranteed 11, you got to earn 12, and then you got to earn the next. So I just want to make sure our kids understand and are real clear with this is just one of the goals. It's not the ultimate goal, and they're there. We just need to go one game at a time.
Augustana of South Dakota football coach Jerry Olszewski speaking with KELO-TV. The NCAA Division III football rankings for this week. Mount Union ranked number 1 in the nation. Mary Hardin-Baylor second. Wheaton of Illinois ranked number 3. Playoffs start on Saturday, and Mary Hardin-Baylor coach Pete Fredenberg will face a familiar foe in Redlands of California.
Yeah, and we've got tremendous respect for the job that Mike and his staff does at Redlands. So it'll be a big challenge for us, but we're going to work hard. This Saturday we got a game, and we want another one next Saturday. Yeah, we really know them, and we've had an opportunity to go out there and play them on their campus, and they've come here in the regular season, and then we played them in the playoffs. As I said, they do a great job coaching, and we'll have a huge challenge.
Mary Hardin-Baylor football coach Pete Fredenberg. The NAIA football playoffs begin this week with 8 first-round games games. There are 7 undefeated teams in the tournament, and the NAIA title game is scheduled for December 21st at Ruston, Louisiana. Colorado State Pueblo is filling its basketball coaching vacancies for this season. Matt Hammer is the new men's coach. Hammer was 118-43 over 5 years at Sheridan College. He got to know basketball in the Rocky Mountain Athletic Conference.
Yeah, so, my familiarity with the conference started when I was a player. We played Metro State a couple times when Coach Dunlap was there, and I know he had a great tenure there at Metro, and so that's where I really started getting to know the conference. And then throughout my time at Sheridan College, I've got to know a lot of the coaches around the league that recruited our guys from Sheridan College. So I definitely followed the league and paid attention to kind of the types of style of play that do well in this league and the coaches that do well in this league. So I'm excited to be a part of it.
Colorado State Pueblo men's basketball coach Matt Hammer. He was South Dakota's Mr. Basketball in 2002 and played at Northern State. Meanwhile, Tommy Johnson returns to Pueblo as Thunder Wolves women's basketball coach. Johnson is a former assistant in the men's program at Pueblo and assisted in the women's program at Denver the last 2 seasons. Protesters at Franklin and Marshall College in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, forced the postponement of a men's basketball game with York. Student protesters sat on the basketball court prior to the game to protest photos circulated on social media which showed 5 students wearing Halloween costumes which protesters believe embodied Asian, Hispanic, and African stereotypes. The students are members of the men's basketball and soccer teams, and they will go through the student conduct process to determine if they will face punishment. The Bellarmine Athletic Program is playing one final year of Division II athletics before joining the Atlantic Sun Conference and going Division I next fall. As a Division I school, Bellarmine will have to deal with the new pay-for-play regulations, and that is a concern for men's basketball coach Scotty Davenport.
It scares me. And I'm a traditionalist. Must let that be said, but it scares me. And I'm all for the players. Don't take it the wrong way. I'm all for them. But you think of a 4-year education at an institution like Bellarmine. Other than a home you buy and a medical catastrophe, signing that scholarship to come to Bellarmine probably erases the biggest expense in your life other than a home you'll buy. Think of that. That's a heck of an opportunity to use basketball.
Bellarmine men's basketball coach Scotty Davenport. Mount St. Vincent's new women's basketball coach is Phil Stern, who is the former head coach at Division I Maryland, Baltimore County. Stern also coached at Division II South Carolina Aiken and at Dowling, and Stern's wife, Ashley Saplicki, is the women's basketball coach at Rutgers Newark of New Jersey. Coaching veteran Bill Saul is the new men's basketball coach at Calvin College of Michigan. Saul is a Calvin alum who served as head coach at Northern Michigan for the last 6 years. He is still the 3rd leading scorer in Calvin history and is glad to be back in West Michigan.
Everybody's here on both sides of the family. Everybody's here in West Michigan. So to be able to get back to that family support is so awesome. And then even here, seeing all the old friends, former players, West Michigan is just renowned for their support of good athletics, and I can't wait to be able to get involved again.
Calvin of Michigan men's basketball coach Bill Saul speaking with WOOD TV. Bill, that's our small college sports update for this week. I'm Gene DeLisio reporting for College Sports Weekly.
Thank you, Gene. We'll check in once again next week. Now, when we return, back to John Jenkins, and we'll look ahead to this weekend's college football games next on College Sports Weekly.
Founded in 1962, the National Collegiate Baseball Writers Association is dedicated to the advancement of college baseball. Membership includes writers, broadcasters, and publicists of the sport. NCBWA members serve as the voting body for the Dick Hauser Trophy National Player of the Year. The organization has a website at ncbwa.com, or you can follow us on Twitter at ncbwa.
Let's get back to the man we once knew as Boxcar Johnny. Oops. John Jenkins. Poor guy, he took one train ride, and we've been razzing him about it ever since.
I'll tell you what, hey, I'm going to have to really defend myself on this. All our listeners are going to start believing this if we're not careful.
Yeah, I know. You rode in the luxury section. I know you.
Boy, I'll tell you what, Bill, the High Plains drifter here, as you say, no boxcar action for me, buddy.
No, I know that. It's strictly big neighborhood for you, brother. I know that. Well, crazy. We have some big ball games, John, coming this weekend, and pretty interesting one. Ohio State is at home. Penn State, with one loss on the year, comes in. Penn State is a capable football team. John, let's size this one up.
Oh, boy, are they ever capable. Hey, what's our Surgeon ratings? They've got them, as far as the power ratings, got them number one in the country. And, as mentioned, they've quietly gone about their business. So is Clemson, by the way. All through the year, just thrashing people. And it looks like they finally got a worthy opponent. And when I say that, we got Penn State coming in at number 8 in the country, I believe it is. That's our big game of the week right here. It'll be a great game.
Michigan hits the road this week. We know that Michigan and Ohio State, that meeting will be up and coming. But before that, Michigan has to go to Indiana, which just played Penn State within a touchdown at Happy Valley. So this will be a real tough ball game. You know, Tom Allen has done a superb job at IU. Sure I'd say he's in the running for Big Ten Coach of the Year.
Yeah, he's done a great job there. They got a good football team, and certainly Michigan, I'm going to say they're going to remain focused. Ever since that big thrashing that they put on Notre Dame, hey, those players have gotten better. They feel good about themselves. They've got an element of confidence that they didn't have earlier in the season. So they're going to remain focused, and they're going to play a very tough Indiana team. But I'm going to say they will prevail in this one. And then they're going to point their sights right at Ohio State as hard and fast as they can.
Yeah. Texas last week went to Iowa State and lost by 2. Now they're hitting the road again. And you'd better believe a very unhappy Baylor team with a real bad taste in their mouth is going to be waiting for them in McLean Stadium.
You know, we used to make this remark when Art Briles coached there, Bill, about you just don't come across year in and year out when you see the Baylor roster more powerful and more talented than the Texas Longhorns. And you don't see the coaching staff being better than the Texas Longhorns. Hey, that's been the case certainly when Art Briles was there, and that's what it looks like right now as far as predictions. Matt Rule, they were undefeated, and they got knocked off last week, as we made reference to earlier in the program.
Yeah.
But you know what? Texas got knocked off. Hey, which one's going to rise up and really declare themselves? This is going to be interesting. I was real puzzled by the lack of offense that Baylor had in that second half after such an impressive showing in the first half against OU. Let's hope that they figured it out, whatever their problem was, because, Texas would love for them to continue their lack of offensive production going through the first part of this game, wouldn't they?
It sure would be interesting. You know, John, I couldn't help but wonder, when was the last time that you saw an Oklahoma team shut a team down like that defensively? You know how much trouble Oklahoma had last year stopping people.
Yeah, you bet. They have really had their troubles defensively, and yet they did an excellent job against Baylor's offense.
They sure did. Now, this one is hard to predict, John. This will put a lot of people on the fence. Georgia is at home against Texas A&M, a team that has the resources to play a team like Georgia. Very, very tough.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting because they're coming into Georgia practically a 13 or 14-point underdog, and I don't know about that. Hey, they had a very, very impressive win over South Carolina. They thrashed them something like 30-7 or whatever. And you know, if you want to play around with comparative scores, Didn't South Carolina beat Georgia earlier? We're talking about, hey, a month ago, not so fast. You know what? It's going to be tough between the hedges, as they say.
Oh, yes.
But this game could be a heck of a lot closer than 13, 14 points. I believe that.
Yeah. Here's a toss-up game for you, John. Arkansas at LSU.
No. Hey, Bill, I tell you this. There was a point in time years ago, and it wasn't, maybe the distant memory of those that can remember the great Darren McFadden, running back for the Razorbacks. He rolled up a 200-plus yard rushing day against LSU when LSU actually won the national championship. This was Les Miles' declaration when they won the national title at one point, and actually Darren McFadden and the Razorbacks did beat them late in the season. The probability for victory, I saw the scrolling ad go across the screen. I think ESPN predicted a 99.9% probability of victory for LSU over Arkansas. Boy, that's tough. That is tough to handle when you're in the big neighborhood.
That's like we announcers like to say, John, it's anybody's game until the opening kickoff. That type of thing.
Oh, gosh. Oh, what a statement. You bet.
John, I have one for you. Now, this one ought to be a head scratcher right here. Lovey is getting ready to load him up. He's got that Illinois team. They're starting to rock. They're starting to sock a little bit. They're going to be at Iowa, which is coming off a big win. Could they be in a euphoric state after knocking Minnesota out of the ranks of the undefeated? Now, Lovey comes in there. Can Lovey sneak one out of Iowa City?
I don't think so. No, I don't believe so. I think Kurt's going to have his Hawkeyes just continuing to claw their way. They will humble Illinois this weekend. That's my thoughts.
All right. Well, here's probably the hardest one to predict, John. Does Auburn have any chance against Samford?
Hey, you know what? They're easing into the state of Alabama right now. This is their pregame warm-up against the Alabama Crimson Tide.
You think so? You think so, John?
Oh, yeah. I believe it is. What do you think?
Yeah, I just was kind of scratching my head. If you take a look at the Auburn and Alabama schedules, you always know when they're going to play because they always put that pay game in there in front of it. Alabama
they got the junior varsity coming in this week. That's right. And rightfully so. Hey, Auburn got their feelings hurt. They had a tough knockdown drag out against Georgia in that tough close game, and they'll get a lot of their second and third teamers in the game against Sanford here, and they'll be polished up, ready for that run against the Crimson Tide the next week.
Well, that ought to be a wild time, no doubt about it. Well, John, let's go ahead and enjoy these ball games, huh?
You bet, buddy.
Sounds good. John Jenkins from the big neighborhood. He is the High Plains Drifter of college football and the man who once broke the University of Houston scoreboard at the Astrodome. They were scoring so many touchdowns that the Dome scoreboard just couldn't handle it, and it started smoking there coming out, and they had to shut the scoreboard down. And John, as you know, I think fans, you all know, John has an awful lot of records that are attributed to him regarding high-scoring teams. And so we will be back with more of College Sports Weekly.
You don't usually get a stock tip from a 16-year-old, but I'm here to tell you about a different kind of stock. It's called Better Futures, a stock for social change that's not about making money. Instead, you invest to help students like me go to college, which ends up making the future better for all of us. My name is Alicia, and I'm your dividend.
Invest in better futures with UNCF. Visit uncf.org/invest. A mind is a terrible thing to waste, but a wonderful thing to invest in. Brought to you by UNCF and the Ad Council.
Time to head for home. Our broadcast family wants to wish you a happy Thanksgiving. We'll take next week off to enjoy the holiday. See you in 2 weeks. And now let's introduce our team. The executive producer is Keith Haney. coordinating producer Bo Carter, small college editor Gene DeLisio, and a special thanks to sports information officers throughout the country for their contributions to this program. Now, this is Bill Hazen saying thanks for being with us. Be sure to tell your friends about us. And we'll see you next week on College Sports Weekly.